This scene takes place before the Battle of Gaugamela. It shows the blood sacrifice before the battle, sacrifice of an ox, to make sure that the gods will be favorably disposed toward the Macedonians. This is standard practice both for Greeks and Romans prior to battle. Going through the ritual activity here, Alexander cuts the throat of the bull. He's now ready to mount his famous horse, Bucephalus, the big black stallion that he had ridden since he was 10 or 12 years old, and would ride for something like, I don't know, 15,000 miles perhaps during his Persian campaign. You see here the Macedonian heavy infantry phalanx drawing up. The men have these wicked long spears, pikes really, called sarissas. This has been an introduction in weaponry by Alexander's father, Philip II. These things are made of cornel wood, about 18 feet long. They came in two sections for easy carrying that could be assembled together at the center. Weighed about perhaps 10 pounds or so. It needed to be wielded with two hands. Standard armor here. We've got a well-organized phalanx, well-drilled, well-trained. And this is something, again, that Alexander inherited from his father, the great Philip II, whom we've seen assassinated earlier in the film. They stand in their ranks, ready for the battle harangue from their general, who will speak to them before the battle to boost their morale. He picks out individual men as he rides by here to give special praise to for their behavior on the battlefield. This may be to represent they were called the Foot Companions, a special elite corps that served under Alexander. He had both a cavalry and an infantry special corps. He's obviously a charismatic figure here, Alexander, as he was in history. The troops followed him very willingly. This was in part because he will fight on the battlefield alongside them. This is sometimes referred to as heroic generalship. From our point of view, it looks like foolish generalship. You don't want to lose the commander in battle. But in terms of morale for the men who are being asked to risk their lives, it's a tremendous influence. Alexander's going to say here that the enemy, that Darius, is forcing his men to fight, that they are in effect slaves. In this regard, he's following Herodotus, the ancient historian, who said the same thing about the Persians during the 5th century. And it's true that the Persian army is made up of largely non-Iranian forces, although the Persians or Iranians are a big contingent in the army and probably the best contingent in that army. But they are not Greeks fighting for freedom and for their homeland. That's not really true. They are in the Persian Empire here. Gaugamela is near the city of Erbil, not far from Mosul in present-day Iraq. The scene with the eagle is an attempt by the filmmaker to give us a sense of the scale of the battlefield, and I think it achieves that very well. These are very large armies. Alexander's army may have been on the order of 50 to 60,000 men. Darius outnumbers him. We don't know exactly how much, but perhaps as many as 4, 5, or 6 times as large. The battlefield would extend for 3 or 4 miles, at least. The bird's eye view gives us a nice perspective on that. Now looking down on the Persian king, king of kings, king by the grace of Ahura Mazda, the great King Darius III, looking extremely Iranian and a bit too young. He was actually 50 years old at this time. Looking out across the battlefield at Alexander, still giving a pep talk to his troops. Darius has had a couple of years to prepare for this battle, and he's got a number of innovations that he's made. He's going to use scythed chariots, chariots with wicked sharp blades attached to their axles to cut down the opposing phalanx fighters. He's also got elephants, although they aren't shown in this film. He's got camels, large cavalry contingents, and lots of archers. You see the Macedonians before the battle whipping themselves up into enthusiasm for the fight and for their commander, who has almost godlike status at this point. He's speaking still to the heavy infantry here. The danger for a smaller army is always being outflanked. And the Persians have here a much larger army. They probably have larger cavalry forces as well. They are highly mobile. They can move on the battlefield rapidly with their horses. They're missile fighters by choice. And if they had been smart, that's how they would have fought this battle. As we'll see shortly, the missiles do have an effect. Arrows, javelins, sling bullets, etc. But they're going to play into the hands of the Macedonians, the Persians. They're going to roll the dice in one climactic pitched infantry battle. What has been called by some historians the Western way of war. Darius is going to gamble with one roll of the dice in one afternoon to try to win decisive victory, ultimate victory. And this plays right into the strength of the Macedonians.
I was here this day at Gaugamela.
Alexander putting on his helmet. Now this helmet looks very garish, and indeed it is. We know that he did wear a helmet like this, and one might think again that this is foolhardy, but it's designed to make him conspicuous to his own men, alongside whom he is fighting. Unlike modern commanders, Napoleon at Waterloo, for example, half a mile, maybe a mile behind the line, he's not in any danger of being killed at Waterloo. Julius Caesar, by contrast, the commanders of the classical Greeks, Pericles, they fought in the forefront. Julius Caesar wore a brilliant scarlet cloak so that his men would be able to see him on the battlefield and take heart. Alexander, every time he fought a battle, fought alongside his men and sustained severe wounds, as we will see in this battle. Alexander's now beginning an outflanking movement, riding rapidly to his own right. And this has the enemy a bit puzzled. Darius has just given the command to try to contain this outflanking movement. Alexander is going to keep riding with his heavy cavalry. By heavy here I mean armored cavalry. And as they take off, they're going to attempt to outflank, to do an end around the Persian left. Here we see the Macedonian center. Heavy phalanx fighters getting into position now, grasping those sarissas with two hands in an underhand posture here, ready for the collision. Marching resolutely into battle. Barbarian forces on the other side. You see here Darius watching this outflanking movement and giving commands to his own troop. Again, the strength of the Persian forces is missile weapons. And we're about to see a barrage of arrows here. If they had kept up this barrage, and they could have done that, they had trains of camels carrying unlimited ammunition. If they had done that, they might have stopped the Macedonian phalanx cold. The Roman general Crassus, some 3 centuries later, will be annihilated along with 3 Roman legions in this same territory, about a couple of 100 miles east of here in Iraq, by an army of Parthians who fought largely with missiles and did not make the mistake of colliding with the heavy Roman infantry. Here we see these scythed chariots approaching with mounted archers, the phalanx getting ready to meet the charge. We're going to see slingers in a moment on the battlefield. It appears that in actuality, slingers and maybe javelin throwers and some Macedonian archers picked off the riders of those chariots, which then rode through the phalanx as it opened to allow the chariots to pass through, rode through relatively harmlessly with little effect. The infantry charge. Now, the Macedonians, as you can see, far more orderly. The Macedonian left, which you see on the screen now, is in a sense going to be bait. The commander here is Parmenio, an old general of Philip's, now serving under Alexander. Again, we get a bird's eye view showing the two forces colliding on the battlefield. The Macedonian army on the right, appearing much more orderly, holding their ranks, better trained, better disciplined, uniformly equipped, as opposed to the enemy forces, which are more diversified ethnically and in terms of equipment. Alexander is still riding to the right here in his sweeping movement to attempt to outflank the enemy forces. And we see now the opposing forces under Bessus, as sub-commander of the Great Kings, an auxiliary force being sent to try to stop the flanking movement. Here we have the scythed chariots approaching. It's at this point that the light-armed troops, the slingers in particular, would have run into no man's land and picked off those drivers. And then the horses would have run for daylight through the opening corridors in the phalanx, as we see in this scene. Chariots are dealt with, and then a massive collision of infantry forces as we get the fog of war here in a long, very long, extended battlefield. The dust on the field of battle would have been intense, maybe 10 times what you're seeing here. It would have been very hard to see anything going on in the battlefield. Come those slingers. Probably would have been in action earlier. Light-armed, highly mobile. They could hit men at 300, 350 meters with lead bullets the size of a small ball bearing, maybe an ounce or so. And they would have been used earlier on, not just in the collision here. We see now the effectiveness of those 18-foot pikes. The fighting will be particularly heavy on the left side, where Parmenio has been left to hold his position as a sort of anchor to the line. He'll be under extreme duress as the attacking heavy infantry moves to the right. The upside of this tactic of the cavalry outflanking movement by Alexander and the infantry following him, the upside is that he will outflank, in fact, the enemy, or if not outflank him, draw the left side forces apart from the center, then open a gap that he can shoot directly at Darius. See here the Persians attempting to stop him, and we're about to get Alexander's command to turn left and complete the flanking movement. He's watching for the exact moment, now gives the signal. Comes the turn. This battle has been well reconstructed in the film in terms of armor, equipment, diversification of forces, what sort of forces are fighting on the battlefield. These are all very realistic. The externals of the film were well done. And Oxford ancient history professor Robin Lane Fox actually served as a consultant and rode in the infantry in some scenes in this film. Again, we get the chaos of fighting here, the extreme violence in the killing zone, men killing men with swords and spears and missiles. Shortly we'll see Darius here himself, who's beginning to be concerned by what he sees on the field. Giving commands for more troops to enter the fighting. Back to the Macedonian left, under increasing pressure. Here's Parmenio. He's about to send a messenger to Alexander to ask for reinforcements, that his wing of the army is in danger of breaking, which would be a catastrophe for the Macedonian forces. Alexander now riding to the attack. He's gone on to the offensive. His turn has been made, and he's driving straight for Darius. We're about to get the breakthrough here against the opposing forces as they come up on the main body of the Persian army. We'll see shortly here. Accompanying light armed infantry along with Alexander. All this again on the right side from the Macedonian perspective. Here we're about to get the actual breakthrough of the flanking cavalry as they attempt to stop Alexander's movement. More concern now we're going to see on the part of Darius as he watches this. Alexander is not being contained, far from it. And we're about to see more of the heavy infantry on the Macedonian side being engaged. These are tried and true warriors. They have been at Alexander's side for several years now, probably marched 10,000 miles with him. And they fought before this 2 large engagements at the Granicus River 3 years before this, and 2 years before this at the Battle of Issus. See Parmenio again under extreme stress. Now gives instructions to his own son, Philotas. Apparently the messenger didn't get through, and that's no surprise. In fact, it's highly unlikely any messenger could have ridden from one side of the field to the other successfully. But in the film here, Philotas will make it to the commander and give him his request. Alexander in the thick of it. Now, this is an incident here, where Alexander is nearly killed by a sword stroke. This is an incident that actually took place at an earlier battle, the Battle of the Granicus River, where Alexander was nearly killed. The arm of his opponent was severed by his friend Clytus, arm and scimitar all. It saved his life at the last second. The campaign could have been ended almost before it began. We don't see the Battle of the Granicus in this film, so that little element has been conflated into this battle. Diversified Macedonian forces, archers, slingers, cavalrymen, heavy infantry, light infantry, all of this pioneered again by Philip. Alexander can have as great a career as he does, at as young an age as he does, he's only 25 years old here, thanks to his father Philip, who had accomplished so much with that army. The reform of that army prior to his coming to power is what makes Alexander so successful so early. Alexander now spots Darius himself and will attempt to hit him with a spear. We do hear this from the ancient sources that he did throw a spear in the battle at Darius himself, missed it and hit a chariot driver nearby. You see real fear on the face of Darius now. Darius, in an earlier engagement at the Battle of Issus with Alexander's army, had fled the battlefield before the battle was over. And we're going to see a rerun of that action right here. There's the spear throw. Terror in the eyes of Darius. Alexander will attempt to pursue Darius. If he could kill him here, that would be the ultimate victory against the Persian Empire. And he seems very close to that goal. Darius turning and running. Alexander in pursuit. His victory is within his reach. Ultimate victory.
We can reach those mountains by sunset. Go all night and catch Darius at dawn. Provision the horses!
It's unlikely he could have seen him fleeing from the battlefield. Philotas, the son of Parmenio, rides up just at this moment and tells him that the army on the left is in peril and that Alexander and his men are needed in another part of the battlefield. Darius wouldn't long outlive this battle. He escapes here, but some months later, 9 months later, he would be killed by some of his own allies. Alexander treated the dead king's body with respect and honor and brought it back to the Persian capital, Persepolis, had it buried with full honors, and then replaced him as king of all Asia.